Welcome to the Bowl Season Stories Podcast, Season 2, Episode 11. I'm Nick Carparelli, the Executive Director of Bowl Season, and today we are joined by former South Carolina cornerback and current Indianapolis Colt Stephon Gilmore, TicketSmarter Birmingham Bowl Executive Director Mark Meadows, and the BrandR Group Senior Vice President of Sales and Business Development Dan Barrett. Today's show is brought to you by Sport Radar, reimagining immersive experiences for sports fans and bettors. Our first guest was the 10th overall selection in the 2012 NFL Draft by the Buffalo Bills and is currently with the Indianapolis Colts in his 11th season in the league. He spent 4 years with the New England Patriots, winning the 2019 Super Bowl, and was named NFL Defensive Player of the Year the following season. Please welcome to the show former South Carolina Gamecock, Stephon Gilmore. Stephon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me.
You were at South Carolina under Coach Steve Spurrier during a stretch that saw the Gamecocks win a lot of games. In fact, you won 11 games your final season, which was the first of 3 straight 11-win seasons after South Carolina never winning 11 games in a single season in the history of the school. Yeah. So you were kind of a part of building something that continued after you left for a little bit. What was it like to be part of building a program like that?
It was great. Like you say, it wasn't winning much until, I committed there. And once I committed there, a lot of great players started coming, like Alshon Jeffrey, Marcus Lattimore, DJ Swearinger. So a lot of guys started coming, and we was able to win a lot of games 3 years back to back. And I think, that's what it takes. It takes for a guy like myself to, pull the trigger and stay in state. And it was great, playing under Steve Spurrier and doing big things at South Carolina.
So you got a chance to play in 3 bowl games, and kind of each one kind of built on itself a little bit, kind of consistent with the theme we just talked about. You played in the PapaJohns.com Bowl in Birmingham, Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta, and then the Capital One Citrus Bowl in Orlando. All great trips. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what those experiences were like? Kind of not just playing a game, but being in some unique location for 4 or 5 days with your teammates.
It was great. Just going to a new city. Being around your team, a lot of the events they had us doing, the camaraderie that, we built that year, each and every year, just being around the guys that, you build relationships with forever. And, playing against a different team that you're not usually playing against, that's always exciting. Also, we always try to represent the SEC, as best as we can. And it was a great experience. Like I said, the guys that I experience playing in the bowl games with, I still have relationships to this day.
Now, you're one of the few guys that got to go on and play pro ball. Many of your college teammates did not. So bowl games have different meanings for different people. Mm-hmm. For a lot of your teammates, that bowl trip was the final football game period they played in their whole career. Did you sense any appreciation at that time for all they went through and the fact that their football careers were coming to an end?
Yeah, for sure. It's always tough. I have friends to this day that, that was their last time playing. And, I really appreciate, what they did for the university, our relationship. And I appreciate even myself, still being able to play this game, because a lot of those guys wish they could, be on the field. So I never take it for granted, when I step out on the field. That, I had friends that would die to be out there. So, it's a great thing, those relationships, they remember it forever. They're going to tell their kids, about that experience. So I think bowl games is, very, very well ran. And I appreciate, everything they do for our teams.
So the average fan turns on the TV in December. They watch a bowl game for 3 hours. They don't all understand you're there for 4 or 5 days, doing all kinds of events in the community that the bowl puts together for you. A lot of our guests on this show have great stories, great memories about some of those different events that were really unique that you got to experience with your teammates. Any of those stand out for you?
I think the Capital One Bowl, was a great bowl for me. Being in Florida, it was a great experience. South Carolina is a great state, but I think just going there to Florida, being in the sun and all the events they had us going to the amusement parks, just spending that time that you don't usually get to spend with your teammates for 4 or 5 days. It's a great experience because, you're always grinding during the week. It's the same thing when you're back at home in South Carolina. But when you go to a place like that, it was great. And, I think all of us going to remember that moment for a long time.
We talk a lot on this show about how bowl games really serve two purposes. They're a reward for a successful season, but for a lot of teams, they're also a launching point for the following season. We saw South Carolina win a great game last year in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, and it kind of seems like that launched them into, their great start this year. Did you feel that was the case when you were at South Carolina as well, that it was kind of a continual building process and that the bowl game played a role in the following season?
Yeah, for sure. We was able to go to 3 back-to-back, and I think the bowls got better each and every year. And I think, even though we won 11 games, I think we had a better team each and every year. So I'm proud of what South Carolina is doing. They played in the Duke Bowl last year, but I think they're going to have a great season this year with a great coach, Coach Beamer. He's doing great things down there. And, I'm just looking forward to those guys, springing it to win it. Hopefully they get 11 wins this year. So that's the goal.
You mentioned the SEC earlier. Every week's a grind in that conference. How did playing in the SEC prepare you for the NFL?
Oh, it prepared me, in many ways that I couldn't imagine. It's just playing against other great players in the SEC, like the Alabamas, the Tennessees. I think the SEC conference is, one of the toughest conferences in the world. And a lot of guys, able to go to the next level playing in those conferences. And I think playing in those bowl games, like we always wanted to represent, our conference because, we end up playing against like Nebraska or like Florida State, teams that you don't normally get to play. So we always try to, we used to brag about the SEC, but winning those games was very important for us.
You get it. Yeah, I know you're busy these days. You're still playing and going strong. You get a chance to watch some college football in the middle of your game prep each week?
Yeah, for sure. I watched it a little bit. The more and more, you play in the National Football League, it's a little harder because, now I have 3 kids and, a wife and 3 kids. So it's a little tougher, but I still watch games. My little brother is playing at Marshall University, so I check him out a lot. And obviously I check out South Carolina. And, it's fun watching, young talent coming up. The game is changing a lot, so it's always fun seeing college players make plays and make big plays in big games.
Did you watch your little brother beat Notre Dame earlier in the year?
Yeah, I watched it. He had a key interception and pick 6, and it was great for him, man, because I know how much he loved the game and how much he works, and just try to teach him as much as I can. And that's my little brother. Man. I'm 10 years older than him. It's just fun watching him play. Last
question for you. We all go through life. We have a lot of coaches, mentors, people who have influence on us. What's the best advice you got from a coach or a mentor, whether it be high school, college, or pro, anywhere along the line for you?
I just think, it's probably my parents. They always told me to, treat people with respect. Never burn bridges with someone. Be nice to everyone. Treat everybody the same. I know that's cliche, but I really took that and try to respect everyone and work hard while I'm doing it. And one thing my dad always told me, he just said, never be satisfied about what you did. Just always try to be hungrier for what you want to do in the future. So that's one thing I took from my dad. And to this day, I'm never satisfied until I hang the cleats up. So I still take that on with me to this day.
Well, that's great advice. Stephon, thanks so much for your time. Been a great player, obviously, a lot of fun to watch. And I didn't realize you were in your 11th year until I was preparing for this show. That's a long time in the NFL period, especially at your position. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. And thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. We're going to take a short break and be right back. Stay tuned.
Vapor Apparel has all your game day essentials, from eco-friendly lightweight sun protection shirts and hoodies to cozy joggers and Sherpa fleece pullovers. Vapor has the layers you need to get outside and stay out longer. Plus, as bowl season's official apparel sponsor, they're creating limited edition shirts for bowl-bound teams made with 100% Repreve fiber from recycled water bottles. Want to celebrate your team's bowl bid with official bowl-bound gear? Get yours and explore more at bowlseason.com.
Welcome back to the show. Our next guest is brought to you by Tap It. Understand how going cashless builds loyalty, engages fans, and boosts your bottom line. We now welcome to the show the executive director of the TicketSmarter Birmingham Bowl, Mark Meadows. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Mark, you've been with the Birmingham Bowl since its inception over 16 years ago. I think you and I have known each other that long, back to my Big East days when we used to send a team your way, and you've always done a great job right from the beginning. But tell me, what kind of growth have you seen your bowl take in that span of time?
Yeah, well, I thinking back, we had a staff of 3 people, and 2 of us didn't come on board in 2006 until August. And so Bo Kerr and I came on, and our goal that year, because we knew we couldn't do everything, was to try to make sure that the players, the student athletes, and the administrators had a great experience while they were in Birmingham. But unfortunately, we should have probably planned a fan event, because the East Carolina folks and the South Florida folks were very excited about being here. And East Carolina started hitting on us about 2 weeks before the game about make sure your city doesn't run out of beer and food. And we thought that was unusual, but they kept saying the last bowl we went to, they ran out of beer and food. So we did the best we could with our CVB to alert our restaurants of what was going on, but we had a great crowd, and we unfortunately did, some places did run out of beer and food the night before the game. So in year 2, we started what we now call the Fan Fest. We started the first several years we were in downtown Birmingham, South Side. Now we're moved to the uptown area right next to the stadium. And so it's a fun place for fans, for both teams to kind of gather the night before the game in a controlled atmosphere. And so, we've got everything that we want, food and beverages there, plus the pep rally from the 2 teams. And so that, that's one thing that we did. And then, moving, having our game moved to the new stadium at Protective Stadium. That was a stadium that was talked about for 30 years or so. And unfortunately, when they canceled UAB football, that kind of ignited the city of Birmingham to support UAB football, brought it back, built them a stadium, and we're kind of the recipients of being able to play in that state-of-the-art stadium. We had our 15th anniversary there last year, and looking forward to having another great experience this year at that stadium.
There are obviously different levels of problems, Mark, and I think if you rank them, having a fan base come to your city and spending too much money might not be the biggest problem, but I see how that would cause a little dilemma for people who wanted to keep drinking.
Well, we got the attention. We got the attention of the local establishments in year 1. They believed us in year 2 when we told them we had a crowd coming. So.
Yeah, there you go. They needed proof. Well, the state of Alabama, specifically the city of Birmingham, is a great football market. You look at Nielsen ratings, and in the city of Birmingham, they love college football. They watch it on TV, and they embrace it when it comes to their town. How much does the local community embrace your game, and how important is that to your success?
Yeah, I'm always amazed when I see the ratings come out, and Birmingham's rated many times in number 1, after a weekend of college football, and then usually always in the top 5. So yeah, our fans in the Birmingham market they love college football, and they're very knowledgeable about college football, not just the teams in the Southeastern Conference or UAB or those teams that are in our kind of area, but they are knowledgeable of college football in general. So, we've been blessed to have a core group of local fans, local businesses that have supported our game, since year 1. And then last year, again, we saw a renewed interest from that core group as we moved to the new stadium. And so, it has been, it's been great for us.
What have you learned about team and student athlete hospitality over the years? And what are some of the tricks of the trade in making your bowl really special for them?
Yeah, one of the stories we tell usually every year as people come in, but the biggest thing we learned in year one was the massive amount of food that 300 student athletes can consume at an event. And so year one, again, we had a joint bowling and barbecue event, and we had 300 players there. Unfortunately, our food vendor, our restaurant that was sponsoring it, ran out of meat just right after getting started on the food, and had to go back to the restaurant and get some. So they told us later on, they came back to us and said, we served over 600 pounds of barbecue meat that night. So it was that's the one thing that we've learned. And then we have another event that we do, comedy club dinner and entertainment that we do, mostly a pasta event. And in one particular year, we counted 19 meatballs on one of the players' plates as he came out. So we use those two stories to illustrate to new vendors, hey, these guys can eat a lot of food, so be prepared when we come in. So it's crazy.
Sounds like everybody just wants to eat and drink when they come to bowl games, Mark.
It does.
A full belly and feeling good makes for a good night, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, so you grew up in Alabama. You went to the University of Alabama. Loyalty means a lot to those people there. How does that help you in your day-to-day networking?
Yeah, I spent my professional career pretty much all in Birmingham. Everything I've done, I was in the truck leasing industry for 12 years prior to getting into this crazy sports marketing world that I'm in. But I spent the last 32 years doing that. Started out with the Alabama Sports Network and the we were Host Communications, and we also had the SEC corporate sponsorship program. So I got to know a lot of people in the Birmingham area because of that. Was part of the planning group that put together the inaugural SEC championship game in Legion Field in 1992. But then I spent 7 years out of state when I was with Southern Miss and Middle Tennessee State, came back here in 2006. And when I came back, and this is just an illustration of what you're talking about, first call I got when I got back was from a local businessman named Joseph Habshe. And he called and just said, hey, whatever you need me to do, I'm in. Pledged to be part of it. So what can I do to help you? And he's been a sponsor. He'd been a previous sponsor with me. He's been a sponsor of our bowl game since the inception. And he's also a member of our bowl committee. He runs our photography committee, and we just recognized him as Volunteer of the Year. So it's stories like that and people like that make this job very rewarding. And yes, a lot of the people that I dealt with back in the early days have either retired or gone on, but there's still a few that I dealt with back in those days.
Last topic here, Mark. As a senior at Alabama, you were a head manager for Coach Paul Bryant. That's really cool. Now, as long as I've known you, I think I knew that, but I never really focused on it until I was preparing for this. That senior season as the head manager, you guys won the 1978 Sugar Bowl over Ohio State, 35-6. What do you remember about that bowl experience in that role? And is there anything, I'm sure there is, that you learned from Coach Bryant that you still use today, personally or professionally?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the game ball from that particular game is sitting on my shelf in front of me. I'm not sure how I wound up with it as a manager. I don't know how it wound up in my car and I brought it home, but it's here. I'm looking at it right now. But yeah, I have two very distinct memories from that game. First one, and this was big. Everybody talked about it at the time, was because that game was played in the Superdome. It was indoors. Coach Bryant did not wear his distinctive houndstooth hat because he said his mama taught him as a Southern gentleman that you don't wear a hat indoors. So he didn't wear that. We were playing, I think for the first time, he really felt a little pressure about playing Woody Hayes because I think it's the first time they'd ever played. So that was fun. But then after the game, once we won convincingly, the players hoisted him up on their shoulders to carry him across the field. And I was terrified. I remember being just terrified that they were going to drop him because they didn't look like they had him very good. And he was just kind of jostling. So I kind of ran up behind and grabbed his belt from the back. So, because I thought they were going to push him out on his face. So I thought, well, at least if they drop him, I can, keep him from falling too fast. And then I said, well, if he falls backwards, then I can kind of help catch him, and, if he comes back on me. So, we thought we had won the national championship. We thought, we go into that game sitting at number 3. Number 5, Notre Dame beats Texas, who was number 1. Arkansas beats number 2, Oklahoma. And then we win convincingly over, I think it was number 9, Ohio State. And so, when we got in the locker room, we were sure we had just wrapped it up. And of course, unfortunately, Notre Dame did what they did to Alabama a lot in the 70s. They broke our hearts, and so the voters decided. I think it was the closest margin, as far as voting, at least at that time, as far as the national championship. But they jumped from 5th to 1st, and we went to 2nd, but didn't make it. That would have been, if they had voted us in, that would have been Coach Bryant's. He would have won 3 in a row, 77, 78, 79. He won 78, 79, but in my heart, he should have won 70, 77 as well. So yeah, if you see a photo there, of that game, you can kind of see when they're carrying him off. You can see my hand. That's all you can see is my arm from about my elbow up, grabbing his belt so that they don't drop him off. So that's one of my big memories from that. And I think you said something about.
Yeah, tell us what. Well, first of all, that's a really cool story, and personally, you and I are old school. I think we would agree. I like that old way of determining a national champion better. Personally, I mean, that you think about the mystery and the the unfolding of games, and if this team beats this team, we have a chance. I don't know. I enjoyed that more personally. Yeah. But the second part of the question was, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say, back, Coach Bryant won one, like I think it's 65, kind of under similar circumstances. They were number 3 or 4, and then the teams above them lost. They jumped to number 1, so we just assumed, hey, that was going to happen again. But unfortunately, it didn't.
Yeah. No. So the other part of my question was, tell me what you learned from Coach Bryant that you still use today.
Well, we all players. I was a manager. We were somewhat terrified of him most of the time. But he was really a great person, and he cared deeply about his players, and he cared deeply about their life after football. And so he was always teaching life lessons, in whether we were in meetings or, otherwise, he was always talking about, what happens if something happens to you, how will you respond to that? And so, he had a quote that I've kind of carried with me. He had lots of famous quotes, but the one in particular is, he said, if you believe in yourself and have dedication and pride and never quit, you'll be a winner. The price of victory is high, but so are the rewards. And, I've thought about that quote many, many times over my career, whether I was in truck leasing business or doing what I'm doing now. When there's been, tough times and things didn't look like they were going well, and, didn't know if I was going to have a job the next year or not, so I learned just to kind of put my head down, keep working, believing in what I'm doing, and good Lord's worked it out for me. So I'm glad I took that one with me.
Good stuff, Mark. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. We're less than 2 months away from bowl season, so this is the time of year it starts to get really exciting for all of us. So. Thanks again for joining us. Good luck with the TicketSmarter Birmingham Bowl this year, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Yep. Take care.
The forecast for this tax season? It's going to rain refunds. Lots of refunds. File for less and get more with TaxAct, the official tax filing software of bowl season. Go to taxact.com to get started today.
We now welcome to the show the Executive Vice President of Sales and Business Development for the BrandR Group, Dan Barrett. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Nick, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, Dan, we're certainly in an era of great change in intercollegiate athletics. We could run through the list of things that are new and evolving in the space, but certainly NIL might be the biggest change of them all. It's been around for just under a year and a half, just under a year and a half. And it seems like we're still a long way from figuring out how it is ultimately going to work. You're an expert on this subject. How would you summarize from your perspective the first year and a half of NIL?
Yeah, it's a new frontier for everybody, right? For the schools, for the student athletes, for brands and companies that are getting in the space. So I think a lot of it this first year has been about education, experimentation, exploration. There's a lot of different things that are coming to the forefront. There are companies that are trying to get into this space. Obviously, they feel there's a financial play as well. So I think there's companies that are trying to get in the space that are new to this industry. I think we're fortunate we've been kind of in this space of athlete representation, really group rights for the last 8+ years. So we've kind of familiar with kind of how this infrastructure has worked, but now it's all translating into the college space and kind of a new format, new structure.
So help educate our listeners a little bit. Are there any particular trends you've noticed so far?
Well, I think there's a lot of things, right? There's student athletes that are trying to figure out how to use it to their advantage, and they are rightly so in that case now. So I think some of these young men and women are trying to build businesses, build brands, and be entrepreneurs, which is kind of cool. Some young men and women are trying to use it as just ways to make some extra money. And I think there's just some really neat things going on. And you look at the type of things that kids are doing. I think obviously there's a huge propensity as brands are starting to identify how to work with student athletes for amplifying their message, using them as social media influencers, brand ambassadors, things like that. We're finding a big influx of that as we're going out to market for the student athletes that we work with across our 70 schools. And the other thing I think that's really interesting is the blend. It's not just football. It's not just the men's sports. It is a phenomenal blend of women's sports, Olympic sports, sports that maybe not currently or traditionally on people's high profile list and things they're seeing or following or watching, but brands, both on the active use side as well as licensed product type things, are really leaning in to the space with student athletes across all sports that we're seeing and across both genders.
So you mentioned student athletes a few times, right? And this is what this is all about. It's helping student athletes monetize their name, image, and likeness. Tell us how BrandR helps them navigate all this.
Yeah, absolutely. So at BrandR, again, I mentioned we kind of have had a background in this. We've been working prior 8 years with the Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL Players Associations, U.S. Women's National Soccer Team. So we've got there's 20 or 30 years of experience in some of those leagues of group rights or player opportunities, right? So think of everything from licensed products, jerseys, T-shirts, video games, trading cards, to watching professional athletes in chunky soup commercials or whatnot. They've been doing it for years. So we're seeing as we've grown into the space now in the last year and a half, we started off with University of North Carolina was our first client, picked up Alabama and Ohio State and Texas. And then the last year and a half, we've grown to 75 schools we work with and represent their student athletes. So we've got over 10,000 student athletes that have opted into this voluntary group rights program that we then go to market. And so we're leveraging their NIL in a group rights setting, taking groups of student athletes into jersey programs and whatnot, as well as in talking to brands around the country that want to use student athletes, as I mentioned earlier, to kind of amplify their messages, talk about their brands. Maybe it's traffic driving, maybe it's a new product release or things like that. And so again, it's very exciting. And so we go to market for the student athletes. That's who we work on behalf of. We have partnerships with the schools, but we work on behalf of the student athletes. So we're going to market for them for licensed products as well as active use opportunities for the NIL.
So this podcast is all about storytelling. So are there any specific success stories that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned earlier, one of the neatest things I think we've seen is the interest for men's and women's sports, especially on the women's side. Women have done a really good job with their social media platforms and TikToks and Instagrams, but they're really intriguing opt-in for that. And I think the other thing we're interested in, as we see it, as things have developed here and brands get more educated and more comfortable, is the type of brands they're interested in coming into college athletics and using college athletes as in these different mediums. So not whether it's the licensees and licensed product side, we've got 70 licensees, national licensees that are putting product in market. So we're seeing a big influx in that. I would tell you that, when it comes to the brands, we got brands that have never spent money in college sports that we're talking to, which is neat. One of the more kind of recent things we just came out with, just launched, was a Wrangler program through Wrangler Jeans and their offerings in conjunction with the University of Texas, which is one of the schools I referenced earlier. Texas athletes wanted to be used by the Wrangler in an authentic, organic kind of way. We identified 8 student athletes. 4 of them were used as models for some of their apparel. It's a co-branded, licensed Wrangler apparel that's shared with the Texas marks. We used 4 as models, and then there's another 4 student athletes across multiple sports that were then brand ambassadors and helped amplify the message through social media. Cool thing about that, even before the brand campaign launched, the buzz from it was amazing. We had over 240 million impressions that were generated through the PR, $2.5 million in media value, and over 170 stories that covered it. So it was really cool to see the media embrace something that was really cool, authentic, organic. Quinn Ewers, their starting quarterback, was one of the featured athletes in there. Quinn has never worn anything but Wrangler jeans his entire life. And so when we are able to identify that and kind of recognize that, he was all in and leaned into it really well. So things like that are really neat. I mentioned the adoption of brands doing different things. And then we've seen some really neat partnerships develop with the folks like at Fishbait Marketing that we're working with on some of their allies and their partnerships across the board, and being able to source student athletes for some of their brand partnerships back through us. So we're working on programs like that. There's a few collectives that we've talked to about how to build some opportunities as they're trying to find ways to leverage back to the student athletes and use the student athletes for different campaigns and programs. So a lot of that's going on, and it's fun to watch. It's like I said, it's a new frontier. I hear a lot of people talk about the Wild Wild West. I don't think we really look at it that way. We really love the lane we're in, but we really love what brands and the student athletes, how everybody, the ones that are embracing it, are really relishing from it. And it's young. It's an immature market right now. From a licensed product standpoint, it's probably 10 to 15% of its maturity, and things will develop. As supply chains get refilled and as things continue to get back to normal, I think we'll see a lot of upside on different product alignment that are in markets, on in store, online. We've got a lot of adoption from the local campus bookstores on campus, the Dick's Sporting Goods, big high profile retailers like that, Rally House. So there's an influx, and fans are able to now have access to product they've never been able to buy before, and have their favorite athletes from their favorite teams, names, numbers, and jerseys, and all different types of products in market they can go acquire.
Well, it certainly is an exciting time, Dan. I think we're just scratching the surface of what we're doing now, and it'll be exciting to see how it evolves. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for your partnership. We're really going to lean into you in the upcoming months and years to help keep us on top of this evolving space. And we appreciate your time, and thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely, Nick. Thanks. And thanks for all you do. We appreciate you.
And thanks to all of you for listening to this week's Bowl Season Stories podcast. Please join us next week when we will welcome another lineup of great guests. If you like the show, we'd appreciate you dropping a 5-star rating for the podcast. And as always, you can follow all the podcast and bowl season news on our website, bowlseason.com, and on social media at Bowl Season. Thanks for listening.